Hi, I'm Annie Nightingale, and in 1966, I was very involved with the so-called swinging 60s, involved with music, involved with fashion, involved with a boutique in Brighton. But this programme is about what else was going on. Everything was changing in the 60s, including the way we travelled. Transport was being revolutionised. We'll be finding out about the winners and losers as planes, trains and automobiles battled it out. We'll be looking at that icon of the 60s, the Mini, and finding out why we still love it today. The death of Dorset's best-loved railway line, how a strike at Southampton docks brought the nation to its knees, and about the pioneering no-frills airline business that was born around an Epsom dining table. Mention 1966 and what springs to mind? Scylla, Dusty Springfield, miniskirts, the Beatles, the Kinks, the Stones. Bobby Moore and the boys winning the World Cup for England. In a national memory, everything was better in 1966 somehow, wasn't it? And there's one other thing that really sums up the spirit of that time, and it's this.
Newsreels and pressmen went to Chobham to see the new 850cc Austin and Morris cars. The little cars corner at amazing speed. They look like showing the Volkswagen and similar invaders just where they get off.
The 60s was supposed to be about modernity, breaking down the old system, and especially getting rid of that most British of institutions, class. And what better way to show what a modern thinking person you were than to own the ordinary man's car that was marketed to the everyday family, but also driven by celebrities and royalty.
People like Twiggy had one, and Peter Sellers and all these sort of people. Mum had a Mini, Peter Sellers had a Mini, so we must be in the same set as Peter Sellers.
The Morris factory in Cowley near Oxford is the oldest mass production car plant in the UK, which has been continuously working since 1913. But of all the cars made there, it was the Mini that was to have the biggest impact on the British motor industry.
It was just different. Alec Izigonis designed this car, engine in the front, transversely mounted. And to start off with, that you would have thought it was bonkers.
Production peaked between 1966 and 1967 with 6,000 models a week coming off the Cowley production line. The plant employed a workforce of 28,000 and the Minis it produced were exported around the world.
The design was so revolutionary, there was nothing at the time that compared to it. They're fantastic cars to drive, they handle superbly, they look great, they're a good-looking car.
Initially marketed as a family car, the Mini had been around since 1959 and hadn't sold that well, but things were changing.
By the mid-60s, it was being perceived as the epitome of quite a cool young thing to have. It became a sort of cult car in a way which no other car had before. It seemed to epitomise a new, fun thing about the 60s.
I just wanted something that would be reliable, didn't take up a lot of fuel, and that I could park fairly easily. The Mini seemed ideal as a small family car.
It captured people's imagination of this small little car, affordable small car. You can get a family in it. You can get your suitcases in the back of it because it has actually got a boot.
By 1966, more than 1 million Minis have been sold, but not everyone had one straight off the production line.
And here he comes with her birthday present.
The ordinary Minis that celebrities drove were not always quite what they seemed.
I think Peter Sellers spent something in the region of £2,700 having his Mini built. The Beatles took their cars to coach builders and had luxurious conversions done, full leather interior, electric windows, full of walnut. All the dashboard and stuff was all walnut. It was quite popular for celebrities to have that. The Mini was a very successful race and rally car, and Steve McQueen came over to the UK and raced the Mini with Sir John Whitmore And Steve McQueen ended up buying a Mini himself and taking it back to California with him.
Mum was always a little bit racy and stuff like that. She used to do the school run in the mornings, and there'd be 6 of us, you know, all being taken off to school.
Those were the days with no seat belts. The children used to crawl in the back, sit on the floor, do drawings.
My mum was blonde, and she was an ex-model and stuff. All the boys used to hanker her, come over and say, you know, your mum to take us to school in this little red and black, you know, Mini. So, yeah, it was just lovely times, lovely times.
But the ideas that drove the Mini to success endure long after the ideals of the 60s have faded away.
The Mini really is the basis for every hatchback and every hot hatch that has come ever since, and they're still building cars today that follow the design principles that were laid down with the Mini.
While the Mini had revolutionised car design, another transport revolution was just around the corner.
Steam on Britain's railways was coming to an end, and thanks to Dosc beaching, great swathes of the network were also disappearing. For over 100 years, we'd all been going on bucket and spade holidays. Bournemouth and the Dorset coast were hugely popular destinations. Special trains like the Pines Express carried happy holidaymakers on the Somerset and Dorset Railway from the factories of Manchester and Liverpool directly to the south coast for their annual 2 weeks by the sea.
We used to go on a holiday at least once a year down to Dorset, and we always went by train. And there were still steam trains virtually all over Dorset and Somerset.
Up until the 1960s, moving stuff around the country, commuting or going on holiday meant getting a train. But the infamous Beeching report signalled the end for much of the old rail network.
The Somerset and Dorset was a classic case of a line that really had never made a profit, even in Victorian times. I mean, it didn't connect two major places, and it was a rather rambling railway, but it came to epitomise what actually everybody loved about old-fashioned branch lines.
There were many other similar lines throughout the United Kingdom, but the Somerset and Dorset was always held in great affection. There was a thrill of getting on board a train at Bath Green Park and travelling south, just to sit in one of the carriages and listen to the engines working really, really hard on the steep gradients, sticking your head out of the window, if you like, and getting that smell of the sulphur of the smoke coming back at you.
No more will I go to Blandford Forum and Morty-ho.
In the south alone, between 1963 and 1966, 18 lines were closed down.
No churns, no porter, no cat.
And on the 7th of March 1966, the last train ran on the Somerset and Dorset line. But a group of enthusiasts at Blandford Forum are keeping their memories of the line alive in miniature. And some of the stations and parts of the line are being restored to bring the tourists back. I caught up with some former passengers at Shillingstone, a preserved station along the old S&D line.
I was on the last train with my mother, and she was very emotional, as you can understand that the effect it had on our family. My father lost his job, he was made redundant, but me, it infected me terribly because I caught the train every day to Sturminster Newton and suddenly no train. So what did I do? I cycled a round trip, 12 miles.
I remember being marched up from the primary school to witness that last train going through. Now, Linda, I don't think Linda waved. Can't remember her waving. But nonetheless, it's not just the railway, but all of those people who drove the delivery lorries, the people that worked in the corn stores, everything else.
The Somerset and Dorset Railway was opened in 1862. It linked towns between Bath in the north and Bournemouth in the south. Bob Downs was a porter and signalman for the S&D at Shillingstone up until its closure.
Farmer Tory over at Turmworth, he used to come in with a ram. He'd bring it down to the door down there, and then whichever train it was going up or down, we always found the easiest way to guide them to up into the guard's van was to ride them. Quite fun at times. But Mr. Torrey used to bring it in the back of his car. He used to bring him in on the back seat.
The local area of Western Regions certainly didn't want this line. They wanted rid of it. It was certainly targeted and deliberately run down. There's no doubt that people locally and nationally felt that a very remarkable railway had passed into history.
I do feel angry about it because it's totally unnecessary. I mean, they say, oh, this was only a sideline. No, it wasn't. It was a main line from Bournemouth to Bath. You could get on the train in Bournemouth and go to Manchester, Sheffield, Coventry, or anywhere in the country.
I don't think we believed it.
No.
Granny used to run her life around the trains. Oh, there's the Pines, put the kettle on. And there's the so-and-so train. Oh, she didn't bother with a clock. Life ran by the trains. And she used to say, they won't close it while your father's on the line. And they just didn't believe that that was going to happen.
So your social lives have evolved around the train?
I met my husband on the train. He was from Henstridge, which was the next stop on from Stallbridge. And I used to, one of our holidays is where we had no car. And what we did, we had a whole week in Bournemouth, but we went every day and back. Because we wouldn't have been allowed to stay down there in those days because it wouldn't have been the done thing.
So
Swinging 60s, they said, didn't they? Not in this part of the country.
No.
Keep on running. Keep on high.
50 years after the train stopped running, the former railway line has been reimagined as the North Dorset Trailway.
Oh yeah,
I have come up and down this line thousands of times. It's now Trailway. I never ever saw that I would come up and down here on my horse, which I do now. I ride my horse up through here.
That your transport has now moved back to a horse.
But I do it for pleasure.
Despite the national optimism, Britain's economy was in a mess. The balance of payments was in crisis. Nobody wanted our products while we wanted lots of everybody else's. With jobs easy to find, the unions felt confident about asking for higher wages. In May, British seamen demanded a wage rise of 12 shillings and sixpence a week. They also wanted a reduction in working hours from 56 to 40 hours a week. The ship owners said no, and a national strike followed. Southampton docks were brought to a standstill.
Good evening from Southampton docks, where the arrival of the Queen Mary from New York today brought the total number of British liners idle to 11, the largest in Southampton's history. Keith
Lloyd was a waiter on the Queen Mary when the strike started.
It was quite an affluent time for a lot of people.
A lot of people, but not everybody.
Did you feel that you wanted that equality, that parity with everyone else?
Yeah, why should we work for 56 hours a week for £14 when everybody else in England we're working for 40 hours a week? OK, people used to say, yeah, but you're seeing the world at somebody else's expense. You get all your food and lodgings, yeah, I agree with that. But I'm also not seeing my children grow up. I'm not going to bed every night with my wife. Couldn't wait to get off the boat. People were leaving stuff, waiters weren't doing their jobs correctly, they were just leaving all the silver bits. And some of the guys would come out and just slinging it out the porthole. I can't be bothered with this. Food was just chucked away, milk, ice cream, all down the chute. Nobody wanted to know anything. Bedroom stewards walked out, they've unmade beds, just walked around. But when you came down the gangway, the pickets were there, all waiting for us, all cheering us off.
Despite the strikers' confidence, the dispute dragged on. Ship after ship was stranded in port. Transatlantic ocean-going royalty, the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth, were both stuck in Southampton alongside cruise ships and cargo vessels.
It was truly amazing. It was something I'd never witnessed before, and arguably the port has never witnessed since. It was quite a sight. In fact, the only people that really made on it were the pleasure boats. They had a captive audience, and people used to come from miles just to get on the boats for an hour and go out on the water and see the ships while they were on the dockside.
Down here, you had the Franconia, Carmania, and the Coronia. They were 3 abreast, and behind those was a couple of Cape boats, 2 abreast. And it was just packed with vessels.
What the seamen thought would be over in a few days dragged on for weeks, and Harold Wilson's Labour government declared a state of emergency.
What happened then?
We were so sure that we were going to win. Like, yeah, Harold Wilson, no, he got it wrong.
You thought the government would cave in?
Yes, but they didn't. They didn't, and it went on and on and on.
It must have affected Southampton tremendously.
Except the pubs. The pubs were doing a great trade, because that's where we'd meet most of the time. But the people that relied on the shops, like the vegetable people and people that did all the restoring the boats, the carpets, and all the repair works, all the stevedores, all the dockies, they lost out as well because they had nothing to do.
After 7 weeks on strike, the seamen voted to return to work after the employers finally offered a 48-hour week on the same pay.
Yeah, I went back on the Queen Mary, and you could feel there was a sense of resentment because we didn't get everything that we wanted. And some of us knew that it was coming to an end, and the passenger numbers just went down, down, down. The shipping companies couldn't afford the loss, so they were just, just collapsing. And nobody would have imagined in 1966, we're now in 2016, that cruising was, I would say today is its heyday now. A lot of people said, oh, the 30s and 40s when it's in its heyday. No, no, no. I think today is its heyday.
As a major port, Southampton also saw the arrival at this time of people from the countries of the Commonwealth coming in search of a better life. Many travelled no further than the city where they first arrived. Today, Clovelly Road in Southampton looks like any other road in the area, but back in 1966, it was the site of a significant cultural stepping stone.
The first Sikh temple was 1966, and it was housed in a property, 8 Clovelly Road, and it's just the upstairs that was made into a shrine and an altar.
Before we took over the property to make a Gurdwara, it was a TV repair shop. We took a share mortgage for the property, I think it was £1,900.
Yeah. So the top floor, the walls were taken out to make one big hall. Downstairs, we had to take walls out to make a big langar hall and a big kitchen in the back.
And I do recall, the first time that we went there, it was such an amazing event. And I think the other thing I remember is the free langar, which is the sort of food that you get.
Food is an important part of Sikh worship, and the lungar is served at the end of each service. The food in the temple has to be vegetarian, but this is not a requirement for Sikhs outside of worship.
All the weddings were conducted there by the head grunty, and the cremations. We in Sikh religion, we cremate our dead, so the body would actually then be taken from the house to the Sikh temple. Prayers will be said there, and then from there it'll go to the crematorium. So it's a very integral part of society in those days, a very strong part.
This celebration is to commemorate Mork Singh, who died in 1996. He arrived in 1955. Mork became president of the Gurdwara on St Mark's Road, and in the 70s became the first Sikh landlord of a pub in Southampton.
But within that street there was probably only about sort of 5 or 6 Asian families there, quite a lot of black families, and the rest were all English. So it was a mix of different sort of societies and backgrounds there. But the harmony was there. The harmony was there, and I remember, the mixing of the people and whatever. They were so tolerant and so accepting, and it was wonderful.
It's 50 years since the creation of the Gurdwara in that ordinary house. Today, Southampton Sikhs have 4 temples. As people from around the globe started to make their homes here, we began to look beyond British beaches towards Europe and continental package holidays. One man in particular was determined to make air travel available to the masses.
Welcome to Laker.
Consider yourself at home.
Consider yourself one of the family.
After a lifetime in the aviation industry, Freddie Laker, with the help of his wife Joan, had come up with an idea to launch one of the world's first no-frills airlines.
43 years old Freddie Laker and his wife Joan announced the news at a London news conference. They're joint directors and shareholders in the new venture.
It all happened in the dining room of our house at Epsom. The phone was going all the time. My mother was on the typewriter, typing away all the letters. That is how it was born.
Surely your old airline, British United, and all the others too are going to do their darndest to stop you getting going.
Well, first of all, I don't think they can stop me. But, of course, the scheduled airlines, or the international airlines like BUA and BEA, their principal job in life is to carry scheduled service passengers. And therefore, their equipment is used for that job, and package holidays naturally must come second, whereas I'm making them the priority.
Freddie Laker had spotted a shift in what we wanted for our 2-week summer holiday and wanted to connect with the growing package holiday market. Freddie had hoped that he would run the new airline with his son Kevin, but tragically Kevin was killed in the Aston Martin that his father had bought him for his 17th birthday.
I think when people grieve, some people go into a hole and don't do anything, but other people just become full of energy. And he and my mother, they just went straight for it. That was it. They were starting up and all hell was let loose at our house.
The airline was to be run from London's new second airport at Gatwick in Sussex, the first to streamline air, rail and road travel together in one place, and the first to specialise in package holiday charter flights.
Gatwick then was really quite small. They had a little office round the back of Gatwick. You could go and drive onto the tarmac, watch all the planes taking off. There was no security whatsoever. It was really very small.
It was at Gatwick that he began the search for staff who would embrace this radical vision. Steve James, who was a co-pilot for the glamorous BOAC at the time, saw the ad.
I was going through a restless phase in my life. It was a big risk leaving BOAC. And I often sit back and think, well, I must have been mad. And at that time, we had no aeroplanes. They'd started the organisation, so I really was in virtually on day one.
Freddie Laker was something quite out of the ordinary. You saw something totally different, I think, in Freddie, in that you could tell his heart and soul was into the thing. And I felt that he was bound to make a success of it. I thought the chance was well worth taking.
And Jeff was prepared to risk everything to follow his dream of becoming a pilot.
The only way I could do it was to sell the bungalow that we had and raise the money from the mortgage, and I gave up my job that I was doing at the time and then went and did full-time course to get the professional license. It was a risky thing to do, but the Freddie Laker idea of the inclusive tour market and the general public being able to afford to go on a comparatively cheap holiday on a brand new aircraft was very, very attractive.
His idea of no frills and cheap fares meant that air travel to foreign destinations is now within the reach of ordinary families.
And of course, they were very enthusiastic about travelling. So, you know, on the 111, open cockpit door, which is unthinkable now, and passengers were encouraged to come and look at the flight deck and see what was going on.
I used to do that.
That was part of their holiday.
They just couldn't believe their luck in that they could have this sort of service at the price.
When your parents own their own airline, it's easy to imagine that life's just one long holiday. But Elaine remembers the perks had a downside.
We always flew Laker because it was free. But of course we had to wait to see if there were any spare seats because, you know, the fare-paying passengers had to go first. Sometimes the family would be split up on different planes. My favourite thing was to go in the jump seat up with the pilots.
In the early 70s, he wanted to start flying charters to the United States, and in common with other airlines, he exploited a loophole. Within the International Air Transport Association, or IATA rules, cut-price flights could be offered to clubs and societies. It was down to the airlines to enforce the rules, making sure these affinity groups were genuine. But with 1.5 million people flying this way, it was impossible.
But how do you join the club?
In a huge publicity coup, Freddie resorted to getting passengers to swear affinity to the groups on the Bible as they queued on the tarmac. But in May 1971, the Department of Trade raided Laker at Gatwick.
A number of you, unfortunately, will not be permitted to travel by the owners of the airline, Laker Airways.
And 46 passengers were ejected from the plane for not being members of the US Left Hand Club.
I don't want any interruptions whilst we call out the names of you who are going forward.
The people in government that are responsible for this farce today are absolute stinkers by any standard.
It was this that prompted him to lobby for a change in the regulations and ultimately led to his legendary SkyTrain service.
Freddie Laker was ahead of his time in the idea of offering people cheap airline tickets and cheap holidays by plane. To run a private chartered operation was something that was very difficult, literally, to get off the ground in the 60s.
But in 1982, it all went wrong. There was a worldwide recession, Laker's competitors ganged up on him, and the banks pulled the plug on the business.
Just stunned that it just came so quickly. Suddenly Laker Airways was ceased trading. Don't know anything more than that, really.
Ordinary members of the public donated more than £1 million to try to rescue SkyTrain. It wasn't enough. The business failed. But Laker, by then, was a national hero. Knighted in 1978, his legacy is the budget airlines that dominate the world's airports today.
I think Freddie Laker will go down in aviation history as the pioneer of relatively cheap flying.
But after some consideration, we can say, consider yourself one of us.
I'm very proud of him. I'm just really sad at how it all ended.
I'm Freddie Laker, and flying with me is fun, and the fun begins with my low prices.
The people I met all had different memories of the events that shaped their own personal 1966, and it made me wonder if the popular concept of the swinging 60s had impacted on their lives at all.
Did you wear a miniskirt?
Oh yes, a very miniskirt. Made sure my knickers were colour coordinated. And my mother used to say, you're not going out looking like that, or you better get out quick before your father sees you.
Whatever you wore was the first time anybody had ever had it. Bell-bottoms came in, flared trousers.
My older sister was 2 years older than me, so she used to buy a skirt and go off to school and hitch it up to make it into a miniskirt, then lower it when she got home.
Because it was the age of the pill as well. Not that I had anything to do with that. But that just freed up everybody.
It was the invention of the birth control pill, and that was, people that they were then treating boys as their equals. Whatever you want, we want.
I got sent home by the headmaster for don't come back until you've got your hair cut when I was 15.
My parents thought it was all dreadful at the time. They thought the Rolling Stones were disgusting. We thought the whole thing was great. And I think we had much more freedom.
The Beatles were quite good. They were quite nice, clean cut, but the Rolling Stones, they were bad boys.
Were you more attracted
to bad boys? Oh no, come on, that's a leading question, isn't it? I've always been attracted to bad boys, yeah.
In summertime.
Next month, the BBC is staging a special event to recreate England's World Cup victory at Wembley 50 years to the day. Tune in to your BBC local radio station tomorrow to find out how you could be there.
Newsreels and pressmen went to Chobham to see the new 850cc Austin and Morris cars. The little cars corner at amazing speed. They look like showing the Volkswagen and similar invaders just where they get off.
The 60s was supposed to be about modernity, breaking down the old system, and especially getting rid of that most British of institutions, class. And what better way to show what a modern thinking person you were than to own the ordinary man's car that was marketed to the everyday family, but also driven by celebrities and royalty.
People like Twiggy had one, and Peter Sellers and all these sort of people. Mum had a Mini, Peter Sellers had a Mini, so we must be in the same set as Peter Sellers.
The Morris factory in Cowley near Oxford is the oldest mass production car plant in the UK, which has been continuously working since 1913. But of all the cars made there, it was the Mini that was to have the biggest impact on the British motor industry.
It was just different. Alec Easygonis designed this car, engine in the front, transversely mounted. And to start off with, I mean, you know, that you would have thought it was bonkers.
Production peaked between 1966 and 1967 with 6,000 models a week coming off the Cowley production line. The plant employed a work-frills airline business that was born around an Epsom dining table. Mention 1966 and what springs to mind? Scylla, Dusty Springfield, miniskirts, the Beatles, the Kinks, the Stones.
Bobby Moore and the boys winning the World Cup for England.
In a national memory, everything was better in 1966 somehow, wasn't it?
And there's one other thing that really sums up the spirit of that time, and it's this. Hi, I'm Annie Nightingale, and in 1966, I was very involved with the so-called swinging 60s, involved with music, involved with fashion, involved with a boutique in Brighton. But this programme is about what else was going on.
Everything was changing in the 60s, including the way we travelled. Transport was being revolutionised. We'll be finding out about the winners and losers as planes, trains and automobiles battled it out. We'll be looking at that icon of the 60s, the Mini, and finding out why we still love it today. The death of Dorset's best-loved railway line, how a strike at Southampton docks brought the nation to its knees, and about the pioneering no force of 28,000, and the Minis it produced were exported around the world.
The design was so revolutionary, there was nothing at the time that compared to it. They're fantastic cars to drive, they handle superbly, they look great, they're a good-looking car.
Initially marketed as a family car, the Mini had been around since 1959 and hadn't sold that well, but things were changing.
By the mid-60s, it was being perceived as the epitome of, you know, quite a cool young thing to have. It became a sort of cult car in a way which no other car had before. It seemed to epitomise a new fun thing about the 60s.
I just wanted something